make a motion to open the planning board meeting of Tuesday, March 18th, 7 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of opening the planning board meeting for tonight, Addie Mae Weiss is an aye. Jim Garino,
Aye.
Steph Harrison,
Aye.
and Frank Hoke.
Aye.
Okay, and I don't believe Rob Wolf has joined us yet. So we have 4 in favor of opening the meeting. So the meeting is officially open, 7:01 p.m.
Here comes Rob.
Okay, here comes Rob. I'll read the, for tonight, we are going to hold off on minutes again, I believe. I think we've got some other things that are going to take up our time to make sure we get them done before this Saturday. So we will hold off on doing the minutes from February 11th. We have a hearing, an A&R on 121, 129 Washington Street.
Yeah, 0 Washington.
0 Washington
Yep.
Street. And then there is current planning board business, warrant preparation, presentation, and potential warrant article changes for advisory public hearing that's being held this Saturday, March 22nd. And the second item is discussion of a 121, 129 Washington Street 40B proposal. The select board always asks for any letters from all the boards and committees, any comment letters to be submitted to ZBA. And since I think it's due April 3rd, and so this was our last meeting, I know I had raised my hand and said I would draft something, and I did not. Other things got in the way, so I apologize. So we'll muddle through and come up with something so that we have a response. But we first need to deal with the A&R and the warrant preparation. The A&R, that is.
You want to approve the agenda?
Oh, sorry. Can I have
Continue with the other business.
agenda as posted? Is there any other additions to the agenda? No, hearing none. A motion to approve the agenda as posted.
Second.
Okay, moved, seconded. All right, all in favor of the agenda. Addie Mae Weiss is an aye. Jim Garino.
Aye.
Steph Harrison.
Aye.
Frank Hoke. And Rob Wolf.
Aye.
All right, so the agenda is approved. The A&R is a hearing. Was that set for, do we have to wait till 7:15? Usually we have hearings at 7:15.
No, it's not a public hearing, Addie Mae.
It's not a public hearing.
No,
Okay.
so A&R is just the planning board one, so you can.
Okay, all right, so we may proceed. I see that Steph has shared the.
Right, so Bob, do you want to give a presentation or do you want me to review what you have?
Sorry, I'm just going to be on audio tonight. I'm on vacation and don't have very good internet. But I don't think there's much to go over here. Obviously, I'm taking on the Washington Street side of what was originally an 18.5 acre lot. 4 lots were created over on Greenwood. Those are not changing. But the what was called the remaining land on Washington Street has, by this drawing, been divided up into 3 lots. It's not terribly relevant to the A&R process, but you're probably aware that I have approvals to build a home and an ADU on lot 1, a home and an ADU on lot 2. And on lot 3, I have submitted to Mass Housing, as Addie Mae was just saying, for a project eligibility letter for just about the smallest 40B ever. It'll be 2 duplexes of in a total of 4 homes. It'll be about 1,600 square feet each. My goal there is to provide not only one of them at state mandated levels of affordability, but that the other 3 be actually, well below typical Sherborn housing options, and to provide, more housing in the lower price ranges, and that's to bring new folks to town. And also it's in your housing production plan and in the general plan of the town, that the town would like to see that type of housing built. So that proposal is to do that type of housing. I'm not sure there's a whole lot more to explain. Lot 1 and Lot 2, well, they're not required to have frontage in order for an A&R to be endorsed. All 3 of them do have the proper frontage in the residential zone B. And I think that's about it. Anything that I missed, Heidi?
No, it looks good. So as Bob has explained, the dimensions here we're looking at, all of these are in accordance with the zoning bylaws. Everything is appropriate with the setbacks and street frontage and acreage for the residence zone that it's in. 2-acre zoning. So A&Rs are straightforward. It's looking for an endorsement for an approval not required of the subdivision lot or change. Sorry. So I guess if there's, I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but otherwise, as it's stated before, these things are pretty straightforward.
I had one question, which is the easement for the trail that follows the current trail, and there are no plans to relocate any of that. Is that correct?
Well, Rob, I'm happy to talk about that. That's not really, or not really, it's not within the purview of the planning board or this conversation about an A&R, but I'm happy to discuss it if the planning board would like me to.
I mean, easements and how they fit on plans, if they're deed recorded, which this is a deed recorded easement that is in the planning board has an interest there. So if you just want to speak to
Yes,
that.
yeah, you're absolutely correct. It is a deed recorded easement. The easement is held by the Sherborn Conservation Commission, and it allows the Conservation Commission to have a 10-foot wide walking path. I have every intent to have that walking path continue. I will tell you that I do have the legal right under Massachusetts case law to move the location of that walking path and therefore that easement. I'm not at this time doing that, but I certainly wouldn't rule out any of my rights under Massachusetts law to do so in the future. Does that answer the question, Rob?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the drawing as submitted matches what's really going on.
Yeah, the easement shown on this plan is the current recorded easement. It actually was surveyed by Joyce Hastings, who many of you know, who's the Sherborn Conservation Agent. She did this easement probably close to 20 years ago.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Are there any other questions about the A&R? Okay. If there are no further questions, I make a motion to endorse this A&R. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. And if there's no further discussion, I will take a roll call vote. Addie Mee Weiss is an aye. Jim Garino,
Aye.
Steph Harrison,
Aye.
Frank Hoke,
Aye.
Rob Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. So we have endorsed, we have all approved the
Um,
endorsement of this A&R. Now we can sign it at in person in the land use office, but we need to do it ideally this week. So I don't know what people's schedules are like. If that's problematic, we can also, as we've done for others, vote to have me endorse on behalf of the board. So I'm comfortable with either direction. I don't know how others feel.
I'll move to support to approve Addie May endorsing on behalf of the planning board.
Second.
Okay. So, moved and seconded, is any discussion? Anyone feel otherwise? Okay, so moved and seconded, I'll take a vote to, have me endorse on behalf of the planning board. Addie Mae Weiss is an aye. Jim Garino,
Aye.
Steph Harrison.
Aye.
Frank Hoke
Aye.
and Rob Lowe.
All right.
Okay, so, Heidi, I'll take care of that tomorrow.
Be great. Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is looking at back to the zoning update section. And we met with advisory last, what day was that? Wednesday last week. And we did end up having a quorum I guess we probably had a quorum more, most of the meeting that when we finally got on. However, I didn't call the meeting to order until I realized we had a quorum when Frank had a question. So, which was totally appropriate. Heidi had posted it in case we had a quorum. We didn't know what time we would actually all be on. I think we came on at around 10:30 or something. So we did call the meeting to order at that time, and advisory had some questions, but were some things that came out. And I'm going to have Heidi actually just, let's see, there's a couple little things that have come up that planning board should discuss. And the best way to approach this, I guess, Heidi, probably the freshest on your mind.
Sure. Steph, do you want to do a PowerPoint one first? There was only one edit on our PowerPoint that I had noted from advisory. And I don't know if you want to do that one and before we go into the warrant articles or.
Well, the PowerPoint, what do you mean the PowerPoint?
So we had some PowerPoints for like each section.
Yeah, which
We
PowerPoint?
It was the zoning updates one, and we can just explain it here. You don't even have to bring it up. We had under the except the structure shed and structures, they want us to note small accessory shed. There was a confusion of what types of shed we had in our bylaw.
Right, because we do have a shed bylaw, and I just didn't want to.
Okay, there's a
Override.
couple of updates to PowerPoints, Heidi. That's why I'm confused because
Oh, okay.
don't forget that I made some and sent some highlights to Addie Mae to look at,
Yeah.
and then I made the changes in the PowerPoint. I did not realize that we needed to approve the PowerPoints in this meeting.
No, we don't. I just want to let everyone know that we were going to add small accessory to that shed section.
So I haven't done that part yet. So I actually do want to share it and make sure I'm putting it in the right place. If we
Okay.
have just a minute to do that, let me, we're talking about this
240-4.1. Yep.
small accessory like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you wanted to say. Okay.
Right, because that was what was introduced in, I think, what was it, 2018, we introduced a category of small accessory shed, which is distinct from the category of shed. So we
Okay.
still have a shed bylaw, but we wanted to distinguish, the option to have half the setback only referred to the small accessory shed, which was distinct. So we don't want to, even though we're replacing we just want to make sure that we say we're replacing the word shed with structure. It doesn't negate the shed bylaw that still exists.
So on that note, when we're talking about PowerPoints, there was also a change to the floodplain PowerPoint that needs to be made. It was a clarification that Chris Canny made in the meeting. Do we have updated language for that?
Not today. I took it down, but I didn't bring it into today to talk. What he wants to have it said is here, I can look it up. Basically that the town is responding to, we're making the changes so that we're compliant with FEMA's regulations. And
No, it was the way that one of the changes was characterized when Addie Mae said no buildings in the floodplain, even by special permit. He jumped in and had a significant clarification to that bullet point. And it's not reflected in the PowerPoint right now because I think someone said, I'll follow up with Chris on that. And I don't know.
Yep.
if someone had a replacement for that bullet, but I don't want to, I want to make sure if it's wrong that it's not showing up in the PowerPoint.
Okay, hold on a second.
Let's see, what was this? I know yeah, I was following what he said and I thought it made sense. What was it? It was that
It was the
the-
floor elevation, an exemption from the floor elevation requirement of floodplain or something like that could be by special permit. Anyway, I just
Okay,
don't want
so,
to,
yeah, so from DCR, the guy in DCR, his explanation to me was why we're what was in our bylaw now implies that the town may decide that these regulations do not apply to something that is shown to be in a floodplain. He said anything in the floodplain has to be subject to these regulations unless it's removed by FEMA through either a letter of map amendment or a letter of map revision. So why we're deleting it, and I can, if you want to bring that up, we can change it now. We just have to say that.
yeah, so here's the language in question.
Yep, and that wasn't a problem.
I thought this was the one that it was this bullet. It was the first bullet here, right? In the
So yeah, it was in
PowerPoint.
our PowerPoint, right?
Right. So I'm trying to go back to the bylaw to look
Yep.
at what. So in the bylaw, I think it was the deletion of this paragraph.
It was, yes, that paragraph, and then there was another paragraph. Both had to do with the town was basically implying that there's something more that could be done in a floodplain, and you can't do that. The only
Well,
way.
there's not another paragraph in the bylaw that's highlighted because if you look at the red language, it's just, you know, this is just
Yeah,
FEMA.
C6
Right. That's the one.
and C3.
Got it. Okay.
There were
Okay.
two verbiage sections that are deleted. C3 and 6.
Yes. Okay.
And
This
our
is Board of Appeals may grant a special permit.
right, and it can't, FEMA is the one that would be giving the letter of map amendment or map revision. The town can't change things in a floodplain. So that's why that had to be deleted. And our explanations here are fine. This section was good. It was our PowerPoint. And when Addie
Yeah.
Mae was given the explanation.
I guess
wasn't
I
clear.
interpreted it to be that there had been a provision that allowed the ZBA to grant special permit for construction, and that's not.
So it's no exemption from floodplain related requirements, right? I don't know. I'm
Right.
making this up.
Yes, no, from floodplain, unless by, and I wouldn't even say even by special permit. I would say no exemptions unless
Except through the
FEMA,
FEMA, and I think it's like,
it's the letter of map amendment or letter of map revision, but just say, I would say.
map amendment process.
Yes,
Oh, map revision.
yeah, it's both, yeah. Or revision process, yeah.
I put you on speaker and have you say that. Okay, hang on. Hey guys, I'm going to put this on speaker. Sorry, I've got Chris Canny on the phone. Let's see. Chris, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear Chris. Okay, Chris, if you could just explain exactly this distinction for me, please.
Oh, yes. So the current bylaw lets the local board, zoning board, exempt certain projects that are within the floodplain from having to comply with flood standards. Okay, which is a violation of FEMA, and so the change that the DCR told us to make was to just eliminate that section that lets the ZBA exempt projects. It doesn't mean that you can't build within a floodplain. You can via a special permit process, but you can't just wipe out those requirements entirely. Is kind of what our bylaw used to say. Like if the ZBA found that the property wasn't subject to flooding under some sort of weird definitions of what a flood is, they could basically waive all those requirements. And so anyway, this just gets us in line with what the FEMA
Okay,
guidelines are, which is that you can work in a flood zone. There's just a series of steps that you have to follow to be able to work in a flood zone.
okay. I
You
think
wanna
that-
read
so I
him
think
the bullet?
we've edited the bullet point to say no exemption from floodplain related requirements except through the FEMA map amendment or revision process. Is except even appropriate? Because they're just,
No, because again, you are allowed to do work in the floodplain. There's just a process to do it. It's through the zoning board. It just becomes instead of being able to sort of wave the magic wand and make the flood requirements go away, it's basically just saying that you have to follow those flood guidelines. And the same thing applies. The other section that changed in the floodplain bylaw used to say if there were existing structures within the floodplain that the zoning board could again wave its magic wand and say no, you don't have to comply with current flood regulations, but you do because that's the federal law. So it's pretty straightforward. It's what every other town has to do in the state. It's really what we have to do anyway, because that's
Right.
what the federal law is anyway. So it's, we have to go.
okay, good luck. I hope your daughter feels better. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay.
So I think there is a little nuance that was brought up in the advisory hearing, where if you take exception to being in the floodplain, your property, you can contest that through the FEMA process. But I think he's right. It doesn't belong in this bullet point. It may be as a Q&A response.
Okay, so just leave it plain and simple.
Yeah, and I need to separate. You know, remember, Heidi, we went and looked up that there was no space in the word floodplain here, but everywhere in the bylaw, it has a space.
Has the space. Yes, FEMA
including
does
in the
not.
bylaw itself. So
Right.
I'm just gonna leave it.
Okay, yeah, FEMA does not put the space, but we do.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so I think we're done with floodplain, right? Can we just close
Yep.
those up? Okay. And
Addie Mae, are you comfortable explaining that now? Like, I
Yes,
wouldn't,
I
go- I
understand
would
it
not
now.
go into much.
I was, now it makes sense. I think I had latched on to the bullet point and now it makes sense. Yes.
Okay. Then do you want to go through it was mainly the zoning up, there was one on ADU really, but mainly the zoning update one had revisions.
what do you want to do first?
I
Either
don't
one's
think we
fine.
had a PowerPoint update yet on this. Why don't we do the ADU, discussing that one? So what came up in advisory, so I had
Heidi, should we look at the side-by-side language?
Yep,
The
I'm
actual
getting there.
zoning
Just-
language?
I'm getting there. Sorry, just
That's
trying to-
okay.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
but what
yeah.
came up several times, so I met, just for everyone else's notice here, I met with 8 of the 9 members of advisory before going through all of our zoning bylaws, all the changes, and it took about an hour and a half to 2 hours for the meetings. Really going through questions. There were a bunch of new people on advisory that had a lot of questions, which I knew we were not going to have time for all the questions in their meeting, especially when we start at 10:30. So it was very good. We got a lot of clarifications done, but they had some other questions that a few brought up on the Wednesday night meeting, but there were some others I said we would bring up and discuss here as a group. And one of the big concerns was with the ADU. We allow right now in our language, if you have a 1,200 square foot ADU already, you can get a protected use ADU because the state, that's what the state law reads. But if you apply for the protected use one, right now we're saying you can't get the 1,200 one. And someone was saying, why should, if I'm going to put 2 ADUs and I'm going to do a 1,200 and 900, why should I have to apply for the 1,200 first and then get the 900? I should be allowed to get both regardless of whatever order I put them in. And I have heard a bunch of feedback on this, and it seems like the most fair way is to allow both on a property. Because if you're going to allow them to do one first and then the other, so they end up with 2, it doesn't really seem fair to tell someone, no, if you're going to do 2, you have to build your 1,200 first. not the 900. Because if
Right.
you
I
build the
mean,
900, we're not going to give you the 1200.
right. I think that kind of what we came out of this was, and this actually did come out of last Wednesday, several examples where someone has a lot of property, a farm, and they're looking for, to create housing for staff and others. There are a number of situations where this shouldn't be, having two ADUs might be appropriate. And there's nothing here that doesn't, you still have to have the septic capacity, you still have to have the water. So I know, the whole point of a lot of the zoning article work that we're doing is to make things less full of crazy workarounds and more straightforward and more, less subjective and more the same rules for everyone, more fair. Um, so it just makes sense. It doesn't, why make something why make something that someone has to know the loophole and, has to know to go for the special permit and then they can go for the protected use. And even still, you're allowed one by right if you have the capacity, and it's always the case the special permit goes before the zoning board of appeals. And so if it's not the right fit and there's an appropriate reason to deny, then it would. So there's already checks and balances in the system. So as Heidi said, I think after some discussion with advisory board members, why make this more difficult? I know there's always that fear. There was a fear in 2018 when we went to basically make ADUs legal, make it legal to rent an accessory unit. Previously, it was you could have a housekeeping unit if you had the infrastructure, but you couldn't rent it, and everybody was worried we were going to have all these rentals all over town. And in 2018, we did finally pass an accessory dwelling unit bylaw allowing for some units that could be rented, which would allow some people to remain on in their residence or remain in their properties. Um, and even since then, we don't have hundreds of these. There's a handful because you still have the infrastructure challenges.
So Addie Mae, can I go through the specific proposal here? So right now, don't forget that we created a new category of use called protected use ADU and used state language, which included only one ADU on a lot may qualify as a protected use ADU. That's in the state's, all of this yellow highlighted straight from the state's language.
Right. And there's
When
not recommending any change to that, clearly.
When it comes to the special permit ADU, which was formerly called apartments, but we're trying to make the terminology more aligned. So when it comes to the special permit ADU, our draft bylaw had added this: a special permit ADU will not be allowed for single family homes already containing any other ADU. So the potential change would be to change this added sentence to instead mirror this language to say only one ADU on a lot may qualify as a special permit ADU. So it would basically say, okay, now you can have one and one. It doesn't matter what order you do it in. So that's kind of that is the proposal that would align with what advisory was looking for, the clarity that advisory was looking
Only one
for.
ADU on the lot would qualify as a protected use ADU.
And that, no, but this language would be copied and replaced here. It would say only one ADU on a lot may qualify as a special permit ADU. It would replace this sentence.
So you allow two, a special permit and a protected use. Yeah.
One of each. You could allow
Right.
one of each.
Right.
I'd like to raise a couple of issues, if I may, which is, yeah, so the bylaw right now defines an apartment as up to 1,200 square feet, and we've got a few of them in Sherborn. And we've kind of redefined that as a special permit ADU, except we've added this new restriction on the, which is kind of, it's a little odd, the wording on the PowerPoint slide. It says 901 to 1,200 square feet. But in the wording, it says like larger than a protected use ADU, but less than 1,200 square feet. I mean, I think seems like it would be more clear to just put the square footage limitations on it. But to me, that raises an issue. First off, I had two issues. One of them is made moot by if we're going to eliminate sentence 9 there about the special permit ADU not being allowed. The thing I would say is we'd have to figure out, well, what happens if somebody has a special permit ADU and then puts in a protected use ADU? Because the special permit has to keep getting renewed, would that imply that you can't renew the permit? And that would be just really crazy, it seems. So, but it's no longer an issue if we don't put that restriction in. But the other thing I'd like people to just kind of think about, I'm not sure what the right answer is here, but if someone currently has a properly special permitted apartment that's 901 to 1,200 square feet, then that just is treated as a special permit ADU under the bylaw. If somebody currently has a 850 or 900 square foot apartment, once the bylaw changes, it seems like it's something that has a special permit, but now it's not, doesn't actually fall within the bounds of how a special permit ADU is defined. It's just a grandfathered thing that is no longer allowed to be built. It basically says if you build an 850 square foot unit, it's got to be the protected use one, and that seems a little odd.
Well, I guess what I was thinking is if someone has an existing ADU that they obtained via special permit and it happens to be less than 900 square feet, that they would no longer need to renew that special permit. It would be a by right ADU, which is all the more reason to strike 9, because then if they wanted to add another one, they would have to have the capacity to have a special permit one, which would be larger than 900 square feet.
Mhm.
And then it would be clearly a special permit ADU.
Are there any special permit ADUs less than 900 feet in square feet in Sherborn?
I think there are, because when we created the accessory dwelling unit bylaw, we increased it to 1,200 square feet, and I can't remember what it had been previously, but it had been
800.
smaller, and that was something that Tom Ermstrom had been working on about 10 years ago, trying to increase the allowable size to a more actually realistic size for livable. So I do believe the ones that had kind of been the old apartments and the old housekeeping units were smaller because that was all that was allowed.
What if we put in a grandfather clause, like less than 12, larger than protected ADUs, but less than 1,200 square feet, or initially permitted prior to 2025?
Yeah, that would seem to be one way to do it, just to make it clear that what is the status of, but it seems like if we're going to put that limitation on there, that you cannot build a special permit ADU that's 850 square feet, we should put something in that makes it clear what is the status of an 850 square foot apartment that precedes this bylaw. Is it a special permit ADU, or is it now a protected use ADU and it's no longer required to renew the special permit?
Is
Yeah.
it worth putting in a specific sentence then about, if something previously of that size was previously a special permit, it would now change status and be regarded as a protected use?
Patty May, if it's okay, I'm really interested to hear what Marion has to say about this.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't realize that she had her hand raised. Yes, go ahead, Marion.
Yeah, thanks. I thought Rob brought up a really good point, and I think you're getting there. But does the state law allow more than one ADU by right? Or,
Not
No.
by right.
Not by right.
okay, so,
They say that you can't, they say that the town can choose to make another one by special permit if the town wants to add that in, but it's not required.
oh, okay. So what I'm thinking is, if someone has a protected use ADU, wants to add another ADU, they could do a special permit ADU. But what if that special permit ADU happens to be less than 900 square feet?
Yeah.
Then you still need a special permit for it. Is that correct?
Good question.
Yeah.
So we
By,
could
by the way it's written now, you couldn't do that. If you,
Right.
if you have a protected use one and you want to add a special permit one, it's got to be over 900 square feet,
Yeah,
which
What if-
again seems a little odd, but
But the
But that
state,
was,
but the state law says that you could only have one protected use ADU, which by their definition goes up to 900 square feet.
what if we strike this highlighted verbiage? So it just says a special permit ADU for units less than 1,200 square feet. So if you have an 850 currently and it's a special permit, it still meets that definition. If you have an 850 protected use and you want to build an 850 special permit, then you could do that if this phrase was stricken.
That makes sense to me, Steph.
Sarah
Is our
has her hand
raised?
up, but I don't know, Addie May, if you're trying to keep it to what your flow is here.
Let's see, so I'm just trying to, can you show me the strike through that you're,
So this, I'm just gonna turn the color green.
okay.
So if you delete the green text,
So special permit accessory dwelling units, formerly apartments for units less than 1,200 square feet, this use is permissive in all districts. Okay, so we're just saying that,
so we would be allowing the by right ADU and the special permit ADU both.
and we would strike,
At any size.
right? It's like this kind of goes hand in hand with 0.9 and we would just strike 9.
no, we would say one special permit ADU per single family. We would just take this language, right? It would just say only one ADU on a lot may qualify as a special permit ADU. And that would go up here. Only one permit on a lot would qualify as a special permit ADU.
Okay, I think so. I'm trying to go back to thinking about what Nora had brought up at advisory, and I'm just trying to remember. We still, the accessory dwelling unit bylaw is still only limited to one, correct? I mean, there wasn't, I know that was the question of could someone have two special permit ADUs if they had the infrastructure and the land?
Well, this says you can have two. These
Well, could they
changes
have
say-
3, I guess? Could they have 1 by right and then 3 special permit?
Well,
I mean,
No,
there was
the-
discussion on that, but Nora seemed, in advisory, Nora seemed, I mean, I do remember Heidi saying at one point, where's the limit? Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 10?
Right.
Something like that. And it seemed, I didn't get the sense that Nora was pushing, I got the sense that she was pushing back on only allowing one if it was built in
Because
the
it
wrong
didn't go
order.
both ways. So, Penn, since you were there, if you just
No,
would like
Sarah
to.
Raggy was
Sarah's
actually
had
in
her
this.
hand up for
Oh,
a long
Sarah,
time.
sorry, but Sarah.
This is just a very small point, but I know Rob was worried, or not worried, but concerned with the grandfathered piece. My understanding, and I could certainly be mistaken, is that a property or a bylaw is automatically grandfathered in until the date change of the new bylaw. So in other words, the concerns of past properties are concerns of past properties until this bylaw is changed. And then anything that was used permitted under the past bylaw can remain in use.
Right, but we're also looking at if in the future somebody wants to build a smaller ADU, a second ADU other than a protected use ADU, smaller than 900 square feet, is that allowable?
Well, I would say that they would have to comply with the current bylaw.
Well, that's what we're working on.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I'm just, I don't think they can say, well, I could have built this under the bylaw before the change. So anyway, I'll back off. I think you've got this under control.
Okay. Penn,
Thank you. Yeah, so one of the, when I was at one of the meetings, one of the concerns that sort of came up is, and I'm forgetting the order, but I think it looked as if you built a special permit, could not do a by right, but if you did a by right, you could then do a special permit, or the other way around. So it was sort of like you could do two if you did them in the right order, but if you didn't do them in the right order, you could only do one. And
That's what we're trying to address right now. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and
So
So,
yeah,
but
thank you.
I think we were on the right path with your suggestions, Steph. Do we want an explicit statement? There shall be no more than 2 ADUs on any lot?
well, if we the language for the I don't want to do that yet. See, I'm really struggling with this, Heidi, how to make changes to these documents because I don't know how to like mark them. But the language that's here, only one ADU on a lot may qualify as a protected use ADU. We cannot change that language. That's from
Yeah.
the state. So we can't put a blanket statement that you can have 2 ADUs, either protected use or special permit or both, right? They only one protected use is allowed. So in the simplest terms, I was just thinking we just copy this language to the special permit clause to say only one ADU may be special permit. So if you have an ADU that's protected use, you can't get another one, but you can get a special permit. And vice versa. If you have one with a special permit, you get one special permit and then you can flip over to the protected use. And it allows that sequencing to not be an issue that Penn was just talking about, that we were talking about
That
earlier.
works for me. I think that pretty clear.
And then the net effect is to leave it with 2 maximum. There's no loophole
Right.
through which a third one could
Right.
creep in, right? Which I
So-
think was some of the intention. Yeah.
So what
Well,
we're looking at then is like if you have a 1 acre zoning or a 2 acre zoning or a 3 acre zoning and you have a house that's on, 3 or 3.5 acres, you could only put 2. But if you had 10 acres, to get more, you just subdivide the property so that you have, 2 5 acres, and then you can put a house with 2 ADUs on it, one being protected and the other one being special use, and the same for the other one, right?
right, you can
I mean, we don't-
subdivide, yeah. The other
I
thing,
Yeah.
feel like I'm missing something though. I'm just trying to figure out, the state's language says only one of the ADUs may qualify as protected use. But
But-
that doesn't mean that you can't have a special permit.
well,
ADU.
she's gonna
Yeah.
change that. Steph, if
So,
you
and
could
I know, so I'm still trying to figure out then why we need 9 at all.
because it goes both ways. Steph, can you copy that next to the part 9 and just put it in green and change it to the special permit, just so we can see both statements next to each
Well,
other?
yeah, the problem is the page break. So I was trying to do that
Oh.
earlier and then it was
Okay.
going to the, I'll do it. It just takes a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
Oops. Oh my gosh.
And if everyone can remember, these laws are very new, and we always thought that this was going to be possibly a 2-step process of let's see what happens with the state. We saw what happened with the 3A where they came up with changes as things went on. So this is our first stab. This way allows both to go, whichever one you want to choose first to build, it's fine. And if anything else comes up in the year and see how other towns are working with it, we might have to revisit.
So I guess, is what 9 now is trying to address that every single family is allowed to have 1 special permit by right. I'm sorry, no.
One special permit and 1 protected use.
And the
Therefore,
protected use is by right and the special permit is by permit. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
So this table then changes to just delete this. How many are allowed? 1 and 1,
Yep.
right?
And
Yep.
also, we talked about changing the size to be just up to 1,200. for the
Yes,
special permit.
I'm not making changes yet because
Yeah.
I'm getting really, like, I don't want to make the changes and follow them through until the board agrees to the changes to be made. So that's what I'm really struggling with here, is how to track these changes. Because I don't like changing the document until we've come to agreement on what the content is going to be. But
So we're going to have, we're going to allow 2 ADUs.
yeah,
You couldn't just say, and we're a little bit late for this now, but what if we said you're allowed an ADU, it's protected use up to 900, or if you want it above 900, then it's a special permit.
well, that's what we had originally, but then
So
it's hard to do the grandfathered in piece. And then also, if somebody builds their special permit ADU first, and then they build their by right ADU and then they want a special permit, why are we forcing them to build a big one? You know, it sort of
Exactly that,
seems
yeah.
artificial.
No, it's an ADU
Yeah.
regardless. So it's by right, it's 900. Then if you want larger than that, then it becomes special
Yeah,
permit.
but what if you want 2 to be smaller than 900?
That's
You'd
fine.
only
You
be
still
allowed-
need a permit.
You still need a permit for that second one.
For the
regardless
second
of
one.
size.
Not by what Jim is saying.
You'd only be allowed 1, which is in the spirit of the state law, right? If you want it bigger than that, then you get it. You would apply for the special permit ADU.
But you don't want to provide an incentive for somebody to build something big when they don't want to. That doesn't seem to make any sense.
No, and I think it's mixed up. Jim, what you're saying is the state says you're allowed 1 by right, but you are allowed to have a second one with a special permit. The size doesn't matter to the state on the second one. We're just making that fit our bylaw because we have up to 1,200. So if we just say up to 1,200 and don't put the 900 there, someone could put 2 small ones in, but one is going to be a special permit. They'll have to have and follow that our town's requirement through the permit process. And the special permit with us requires the owner to live in either the main house or the special permit one.
I understand. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess
It's
I guess I'm trying to figure
complicated.
out, maybe I feel like I'm missing something. Like, why aren't we saying only 1 ADU and a lot? Well, we've got the state's language says only 1 ADU, 1 by right ADU is allowed
Protected
By right.
use.
by right. And then we're saying only 1 ADU and a lot may qualify as a special permit. So
So the other lot one may qualify as a by right one.
okay.
You
So-
have an
so-
ADU and it has to fit into one of 2 categories. It's either
Okay.
protected use or special permit.
Okay. Yeah.
So you build one and it's either protected use or a special permit. You can't build a second one of the same type.
Okay.
The second one has to be in the other category.
Okay.
So can I, I'm just curious, at what point, I mean, has there been a discussion about whether 2 ADUs is desirable?
So that's how this
There
all
was.
came up, because
Right.
Nora was saying, well, why can't I build 3 or 4 ADUs if I have 10 acres to do that? And so, and then there was this convoluted of how do you know the loophole of which sequence to build in that Penn was talking
Yeah.
about, right?
So we've avoided a sequence, but there's still the question of
Is 2
on
the right number?
is
So-
2 the right number, or
Yeah.
is 1 the right number? Which I'm curious as to whether that has been discussed and settled, or
Well,
whether this is an artifact of that's arbitrarily arisen through this process and hasn't really been truly settled.
I think the what has come up is right now we're not necessarily limiting to 2 exactly. We're saying there's, I mean,
Oh,
if
I
some-
very much think we are.
We are.
yeah,
In fact,
We
my
are.
sense was that the board would have, and a lot of the public input would have preferred us to limit to 1. However, that leaves us in the position that people who already built apartments would all get 2 and nobody else could have 2, and that seemed unfair.
Right. And the other situation came up that if someone had, again, like in a scenario where you are, perhaps having, you've got, 10 to 20 acres and you have a situation where you could maybe have 2 apartments or 3 apartments for staff for a barn or some kind of, a facility. There might be situations that warrant it, and they're very rare. They're not the norm. And I guess this fear of trying to, we all assumed everyone would want us to limit. But
But Addie May, in that scenario, if you have more than, again, if you're in 3 acre zoning with a 20 acre property or a 10 acre property that is a farm, you could have 2 ADUs on that, right? Or if you subdivide the 20 into another patch where you got a 3 acre or 2 acre, whatever the zoning is for that area that you're in, then you could put another whatever you want there. It could, any size house would be the beginning of it, and then you could put ADUs on that as well. So when
you'd
you
have
have
to put
a
a house, which
larger
is a different.
property, then you
It's a
can.
different lot. Yeah. Coming up with one rule for properties of vastly different acreage is pretty difficult.
I mean-
So I can understand that scenario of a larger lot, and it seems reasonable that you might want to allow an additional ADU. But trying to weave the language that then would allow the same rule for a much smaller lot, it doesn't seem to be kind of
Right.
logical.
So I guess, I
So-
mean, again, it's one of those things. I think what we have right now essentially allows up to 2, essentially. 1 special, 1 by right. And like most of our zoning through history, I think we all, from what we've all discussed, I think we all agree that rather than creating weird loopholes and someone having to be tricky about which order they do things, let's at least make that straightforward and live with this and see how it goes. And if a situation comes up where you do have those weird, something extreme where it's warranted, then then it's a discussion with zoning board and discussion for future. But since this is somewhat new and it's, again, it's just like in 2018, not knowing it was all of a sudden everybody going to go out and build one or apply for one. And the reality is you still have the constraints on the infrastructure. So I think if
But
everyone's okay with this change as we have it, this makes sense. This is pretty straightforward. It at least is not, um, it's making it the same for everybody.
Marion had her hand up for some time, but just took it down for quite a
Marian,
long
did you
time.
have something? I know we've kind of gone in circles here.
I don't
Is
know if she
everyone feel
stepped away.
comfortable with where we're at now? I'm going to take that as an assent, an agreement that we are comfortable with this direction.
I think it accommodates what Rob was mentioning, which is a really good point, and it takes care of the issue of there's no finagling that needs to be done in terms of which one that gets done first, so that you don't get locked out of another, etc. So I think what we have now seems to me to take care of both issues.
Right.
And again, in my mind, it's pretty simple that if you have over the acreage, I mean, there's nothing larger in Sherborn than 3 acres. So if you had a 10 acre property and you wanted to put more ADUs on a particular property because it's so large, then you just subdivide. The only issue
Frank,
with
I
that,
don't know if it's that simple because the special permit ADU requires owner live in, right? So it's not quite as simple because you're not just building addition. I don't want to overplay that just because there are other aspects to it. You have to build a principal dwelling, and then the owner of the property that you've subdivided has to live in one of the units. And if you're not planning to transfer land ownership, how can you live in two different, structures, dwellings? So in the concept, I agree with you, but it might not be quite as simple as just and then you have to have like the frontage and things like that to subdivide, right? To buildable lots. So It's not going to work in every case necessarily, but it is
But going
is an
back
option for
to where we
some.
started, let's start with this at least, where we're making it fair for everyone to do both by right or special permit if the situation warrants, and live with it, and zoning will
I
be
mean,
coming
you
back.
could, in the future, you could expand it to allow, you know, more special permit ADUs up to any number at the discretion of the board, or however you phrased it. But, you know, I think the voters at town meeting would go ballistic if you propose that now when you don't
Right
have
now.
to.
Yeah,
Right.
agree.
Was there any, I don't recall, was there anything else related to ADUs that had come up in those discussions?
Yeah. So instead of saying less than 1,200 square feet, we need to say 1,200 square feet or less. Because the 1199 versus 1,200 that someone brought up, right?
Yeah.
So
Up to
Um,
1,200 or, yeah.
Yeah.
not,
It has to
yeah,
include
yeah.
1,200, yeah.
I'm just gonna do, this is what was discussed. I don't think it changes anything.
No,
Well, it changes it by one square foot, which goes from 1199 to 1,200, and which
Well,
was
we weren't,
the key idea.
I think that when we said less than 1,200 square feet, that was out of sync with the intention. So this is sort of correcting it back to the bylaw
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
as it
Yeah.
currently
But,
stands.
but
Yeah.
it's different than what was there before because it says less than, so the difference is one square
Yes.
foot.
right.
Okay.
Yes,
So, and then was there anything else?
That's all I have
yes.
for eight. Oh, for
I
AD.
added the period here. Do I need, and
Oh,
I
no,
need to
that's
highlight
that's
that.
administrate, yeah, but that.
But
we
I
don't
need to
to vote
highlight
that.
it for Jeannie to catch and fix on her side, right? So,
Okay. All right.
so
I guess,
yeah.
can I make a motion to approve these updates, a motion to approve these updates to have an updated clean copy to be presented to the select board and to the warrant.
Second,
So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Addie Mae Weiss is aye. Jim Garino,
I,
Steph Harrison,
Aye.
Frank Hoke,
aye.
Rob Wolf.
Aye.
Okay, so this takes care of updating ADU.
Yep.
I just will mention that the way we've changed it to be 1,200 is compatible with the current regulations. They say the gross floor area of such unit, an apartment, shall not exceed 1,200. So we're
Right.
totally consistent with what we
Yep.
were all along.
Yep.
Thank you, Rob.
Isn't
So
that,
I'm changing this PowerPoint in a couple of places up to 1,200. Yep.
no, you don't want up to 1,200 because that means not including 1,200. You want
No, it
1,200.
does mean it.
Yeah,
It's
up to
obviously
includes
inclusive.
it.
We
Yeah.
didn't want less than 1,200, which is what it said before.
1,200 or less. Up to 1,200.
And I just want to make sure nothing else.
I think the rest of the
Changed.
PowerPoint was okay. Just, we did the chart.
Existing special permit. One per family, yes.
Okay. So I think everything else is okay. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to save the PowerPoint and I'm going to save the split screen. I think my brain is going to explode before town meeting.
Yes.
I mean, do you
Okay.
want to reiterate that point where it only works with the septic and well capacity? I mean, I'm sure everyone understands that, but it's just making another bullet point.
Local regulations apply.
Yeah.
Oh,
And likewise here. Yeah. Does that work for you, Jim?
yeah, I was just stating capacity, I guess, because that could vary outside of regular local
When
regulations.
we talk about what does the local regulations mean, we will discuss that means the the Board of Health regulations, the conservation, all of those local regulations that deal with infrastructure and setbacks and, capacity.
Um, one more thing I need to look at though, really quick. Where we made green changes, we need to make sure that the red notes still line up with those changes. So this picks up the term change from apartment to special permit ADU. Notes the size distinction. That's fine. There is still a size distinction.
Rentals are allowed.
I didn't like this word, an attempt, right?
No.
So I was just gonna say limits multiple ADUs on one property. And that's it. Okay. Okay. All right, so I'm going to save the split screen. So I think updates is next, Heidi, right?
Yep.
Was there before we go there, was there anything on MBTA that needs to be changed?
I didn't have any notes on that. That was a pretty straightforward one with their presentation. Penn, do you remember anything else, if advisory wanted anything else on the MBTA 3A?
No, it was well done. I mean, it's all well done. I'm not saying it's it was well done in contrast, but no, we were okay.
Okay.
This is what the new slide looks like. I just want to make sure folks, so Addie, may I just, instead of using your stuff, I just
Fine.
added in the words.
The towns.
Is this, does this look, the only thing that's not on here is the credit and the scale.
Which I think is
And
fine for this purpose.
Okay.
No one's gonna be, I mean, the scale is only useful if you actually have it in paper and you're using a map to,
Exactly.
for this.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna save and close. Three A, ADUs, and ADUs. Okay, so now we're on to updates. So let's go to split screen. So there's like a lot here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did the small accessory in the PowerPoint.
Yep.
Okay, so the old drawing. So this,
I have Jeannie, she put a version online, but I don't have her word version. She put them side by side and said delete drawing, delete this one on the old one.
okay. So we just don't need to reflect that here? Because she's already done it.
Because she's got that already. Yep. I just wanted everyone to, it's something I just want to note, keep on my tabs what we had to do.
Well, we have to vote it, right? So I just want to make sure everybody's,
If you want to
do we have to vote it or is it administrative?
It's actually, we'll add it to our vote to be thorough.
I'm just trying to get to the original.
It's under planning. No. If you go back, departments.
I was just gonna go here to the actual zoning bylaw, right? Because this is what's in the zoning bylaw.
Yep.
So to put it into ours, well, I don't know. So I guess that one of the changes we're talking about is that we put in this new example by Chris Canny and we deleted what had been there and added the new, B1 and B2, that the replacement drawing basically. But when we put in the replacement drawing administratively, we didn't strike out the old drawing, which didn't have the B1 and B2, right? It had like straight B at 50 feet and straight D at 50 feet. So what we should do is show this up with a strike through and then show this up as a yellow highlight.
Right, which is
Added.
all challenging to show right now, which
It's, yeah, very challenging to put on your screen right now. So I just wanted to sort of articulate that because that's intended to be part of the vote when we vote to approve the changes to the bylaw, is that we need to sort of illustrate. So I'll do this, illustrate
So
that.
can you, yeah, I was gonna say, can you
Oh.
go, and I can show you on the website where it's posted?
I
What-
don't know. Yeah, I mean, do people need more explanation? Does people want to see it? I don't need to
I
open
don't
it if
know.
people
That's
don't
fine.
need to
Yeah,
see
if you
it.
want to see what and vote, say this is what we're voting, that's fine, but that's okay. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Yeah,
If people want me to pull it up, I can. I'm just trying to be.
I'm okay with this. Does
Yeah,
anyone have an
that's fine.
issue with not seeing? Are we good with this, everyone?
Yep.
Mhm.
All right.
All right. Then we have 3.2. Is it 3.2?
the
Number
number
one.
one initially, do we have the number? Okay, no,
Where is it?
I know, I'm trying to look, I don't see it on this one.
I know what to do. I think I just called it on the wrong section. Find. 4.3F. Whoops. 4.3F. There's 4.3F.
It's no, it's not that one.
Is it that one?
I don't think it is, because that's what we want to, it should refer to this.
I wonder if it wasn't in the updates article. 4.3F.
But Stephen found it. He said, oh, you mean to refer to this?
Do you remember which bylaw we were on at that moment?
No, that's, I thought it was the zoning update, but
We need to change this, so we have to kind of, so definitely wouldn't be in floodplain. It probably wouldn't, maybe it's in ADU. That's the only other one that overlaps with.
I know, that's what I'm trying to think of which.
Look at ADU and just see. There it is. Oh, it is, it's in 3.2 item 1, but it's in the ADU bylaw, not in the,
Okay,
okay.
that's, yep.
So the issue here is that on the website, 3.2, 3.2, one single family home references section 244.2. And
Which
at
is
some
a-
point, we caught that this was an incorrect reference. It should be 4.3F. And we just didn't mark it as a change.
I think it should be both, because 4.2 is the schedule of dimensional requirements. And you do still want to refer to that, but it really should also go to 4.3F. I think it should.
Yeah, you were gonna have
both.
and.
Yeah,
So it's 4.2 and 4.3F.
4.2. But 4.2,
it's our chart.
but that doesn't have that. That's the scheduled dimensional requirements. The 4. oh my gosh, 3.21. This says the number of dwellings shall not exceed the number shown here. And this schedule of use doesn't have the number of dwellings. It's
Okay.
4.3F that has the number of dwellings, right? So if I pull up 4.3F just from our
Yeah.
ADU bylaw, it's oh my gosh, I lost it again. No, there it is.
Yeah.
4. Oh no, this is just the section reference. I don't think this should refer to 4.2 because it doesn't talk about the number
Okay.
of dwellings.
All right, so we just have to add that in then that we had to make that italic and add in the other one, the cross out.
Right, like
Yeah.
this. And then make this in italics and
And
make
bold.
the whole thing green.
Yep.
Okay. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe it was on the open space bylaw, Marion. There was, I mean, Marion, Heidi, when there was a section where we said that actually there's 2 places that it should be referenced. We were looking at it.
Okay, so back to updates. Items. So that really should have been with ADU. I'm just gonna shuffle it for my own note keeping here. Okay. So now close
The
this
number
search
3 was the next one, 3.23.
Yes.
And after we wanted to say, this does not include transients, comma, tourists, or if otherwise approved,
Unless.
unless otherwise approved. Because they wanted to be able to cover rooms at Fireside that could be rented that are.
So the point was made here is that right now we're saying renting of rooms is allowed, but only for 30 days or more. This was the Airbnb short-term rental exclusion, right? I think this doesn't go with transients and tourists. I think this goes under after for terms of may only be rented for terms of more than 30 days unless otherwise approved. I think that's where it goes. Doesn't
Okay.
it?
Yeah.
But
So
that to
that
me,
if
okay, yeah, that's fine.
Fireside eventually opens its boarding house or hotel, the inn,
Yep.
the old inn,
Yep.
that it would have an approval for that. Any questions from the planning board on that tweak?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Okay, the next one is number 26. Remove single and make ADUs plural. Because we have the possibility of allowing 2.
Yep.
Oh, with the A goes away too,
Yeah.
with ADUs.
Right.
Should we put the S in parentheses, ADUs, like parentheses S?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
or you
probably-
could just say 1 or more, or 1 or 2.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Heidi, any questions? Should we move on?
I think we can move on.
Okay,
Okay.
4.1. I think we're okay because we say small accessory. This is where they want to talk about number 2 and 5.
And this came from your one-on-one meetings with advisory, correct?
This came with the one-on-ones. It was briefly mentioned on Wednesday, I think. Chris was involved with this. Actually, Penn is one of the ones who had the questions about these items and whether they should be in here. Chris was concerned
Discussion.
about mentioning a foundation because he feels that the zoning bylaws should not be involved with building codes, and foundation is more of a building issue as opposed to a zoning.
Well, and such things like an arbor or pergola might require some sort of a foundation, whereas, I mean, we've said, and the key is making it that it's not permanent in nature. And so then it'll be on a case-by-case basis.
Oh,
Whether,
so it would just be to strike
Strike the example.
this.
yes.
Yep.
Because a fence requires a foundation.
I don't even,
So-
I have no idea what it means to be not permanent in nature at this point, though. What does that mean?
That's
I
up to the
mean,
building
it's-
inspector.
It's language in there so that if there is, I mean, it doesn't require a permit, so someone puts this up, but if there's, by saying it's not permanent in nature, if there's abutters that have take issue with it and come to the, request it to be reviewed and see if it fits in the, within the kind of definition of what this is intended for, it provides the zoning enforcement officer some kind of that he can look into building code and look into, it just gives him something to work with, because we're allowing this to be a half the distance, instead of a 30-foot setback on the side, it's allowed to be a 15-foot setback. So with sheds, typically around town, sheds were then put on like blocks so that they could be lifted up and moved, and that was where it did it. But now that we're taking out the word shed and replacing it with structure and expanding it to include arbors and pergolas, then it makes it a little messy. But I think having it not permanent in nature is still important because of that reduced setback and the nature of how it could be. Just it could be impactful on an abutter if it's not appropriate.
Pen has his hand up, Addie May, just so you are aware.
Pen, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I think just one of the things that, I understand the intent behind what you're doing with this, but I'm always I'm a little leery about things that either aren't defined or just kind of open up a gray area. And someone else raised the question: what does not permanent in nature mean? Unless you're going to define that, which I think would be in a giant can of worms. It's, you have two neighbors and they're going to argue, how are you going to settle what that means at the time? Where it seemed to me cleaner to just strike all of 2, because you have the same issue with the foundation. How do you define that? What is it? And I know what you're trying to address, Addie May, but
The problem is if we strike not permanent in nature, it took a lot of effort to get this bylaw done in 2018 to introduce kind of an exception for smaller structures or smaller sheds to have this, and Chris has run into situations with, sidewalks around pool decks, and that's where he's like to have like a pool deck be counted as part of this small accessory structure definition. And if we don't, again, the fear, because we reduce the setback, if there's not some sense that there's because there's no permit required for this. If there's not some sense that there is some recourse for a neighbor, then I think we'll lose all of it.
Don't say there's no permit required, because our bylaws say up to 200 square feet, there's no permit, but between 200 and 250, there is. The setback is allowed, it's like we're weird, we allow that half the distance up to 250 square feet, but the permit is different.
Right, okay, so yeah, at two, anything larger than 200 square feet needs a special permit
Right,
still.
Right.
But
Can
up
have
to
the
200
small.
square feet, which is
Right.
still decent size, doesn't
Yeah.
need a permit, so.
What's a good word to substitute permanent? Substantial.
The other thing that's a little strange is if you look at the current bylaw definitions, it defines structure already. And it says structure is a combination of materials other than a building constructed or placed in a fixed location on the ground or attached to anything having a fixed location on the ground. Includes tennis courts, paddle tennis courts, and swimming pools, but does not include walls or fences 6 foot or less in height or utility poles. So it's like a shed and a structure were two totally different things in the bylaw, in the current bylaw, and now we're creating a small accessory structure which is totally different from this other thing called a structure.
Well, it's like a subset of what you said, right?
Well, it says other than a building.
Oh, okay.
I think of a shed as a building which is a small building which is not meant for human habitation and is not meant for parking of cars.
Where does it say that?
I'm saying that's what I think it is. It doesn't say
Oh.
that anywhere.
Patty Mae Penn has a question too again.
Go ahead, Pen.
Thank you. Actually, isn't that covered in, I'm trouble reading this, the yellow, the highlighted section in the first paragraph, structures including sheds, arbors, pergolas, pavilions, etc. And I know it doesn't necessarily answer that, but it does the structure question, but it does.
That's fine. I'm just wondering, are we still going to have this conflicting definition of structure in the bylaws, or have we struck that?
Where is that? What section?
It's in
240 definitions.
It's in definitions, 241.5. There it is.
I mean, other than a building, let me look up building. Is a building a permitted structure?
No, it's a combination of materials, whether portable or fixed. It says portable or fixed.
Having a roof supported by walls and design for the shelter. So this is a building is a shed is a building.
Yes. It looks like, yeah, just something to hold firewood would be a building. So it's clear that a structure is currently defined as something that a shed would not fall under. So we have conflicting definitions
for
here.
walls.
Yeah, but we can't do that right now because we'd have to have another hearing to go and change all these items. You know, if we really wanted to, I don't think this is something we can come in right now and address. You know, all we're allowed to address is what we've already voted on, and we can make some tweaks within what we voted on.
And so the recommendation was to remove the IE a foundation because that's potentially problematic, and kind of leaving it at that and living with it.
Maybe just acknowledge there's more work to do, but
I think
not now.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is, Rob's got some good points. I just don't think we don't have the time.
We're
Every
still
time you look at it, you come
improvement.
up with something.
Yeah,
I-
that's right.
This is why I'm asking for that 75,000 to review our bylaws.
Um, Steph, are you able to go back to the split screen set page?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So the question is, shed and structure definitions aside, the question that Penn brought up is, do we delete the whole thing because permanent in nature is so subjective and we can't even define it, right? So do we strike all of number 2?
My fear is striking the not permanent in nature when we
Mhm.
have discussions with the Council on Aging and people who kind of remember going through this the first round in
Mhm.
2018 of adding this new definition of, but at the time it was created a small accessory shed option that allowed for the half the setback. People were anxious about what did that mean, and we're
And we're gonna run into, this wasn't in our public hearing, if it's too major a change.
If we
so
just
leaving
delete,
the IE not on a foundation is straightforward, especially if you're thinking of the pergola example and the pavilion and arbors. And yes, it's probably needs to be revisited, but it was felt that taking that out, that's really, again, as Chris Canny pointed out, that foundation, what constitutes a foundation gets, foundation is a building code word, and let's not do that. Let's not introduce that here. So again, not being perfect, but trying not to let perfect be the enemy here.
That would go for number 5 as well, right?
We haven't, yeah, I think these are really good points. The concern I've gotten, when I brought to town council, like what we could do, without having another public meeting, we don't have time to advertise in the paper, have a public hearing, and bring these out again before our town meeting.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think these items are ones that are gonna create discussion and really need to have been vetted or discussed before we just strike them.
That makes sense to me.
And, Dan did not want to, the concern we have is trying to use the advisory's public hearing as this to make these motions would be also very awkward if the town has not had chance to have this publicized as it was going to be discussed. Right now, there's no notice that this would even be discussed in advisory as being taking them out. The changes have already been publicized of what's in the yellow.
But is the simple question whether or not to vote on what's in green?
Yes.
Yes.
So for tonight, I think the recommendation is anything beyond that would really require posting a hearing and having further discussion. I think council felt that just taking out the IE, not on a foundation, was kind of generic enough. Doesn't really change anything, and it also just kind of eliminates one point of confusion. Yes, Penn.
Well, so I understand where you are, and I'm completely on board with it. And I'm new to this process, but I understand there's a limit to what you can change. So I'm not talking about now, but I just want to express the concern for number 5 for down the road, no pun intended, is it's arbitrary. And one of the things that I see sort of across town from this where the advisory perch is, I think the town creates little pockets are sometimes very big pockets of legal peril, if that's not too strong a phrase. Things that could be challenged, and if they were challenged, I'm not sure they would stand up. And that's where that eliminating one very specific use, kind of for no obvious reason, struck me as one of those things that, somebody could say, well, they had a shed, they put a car in it, maybe without knowing the bylaw, they get in trouble, and then they go, wait a minute, this is arbitrary, and the judge saying, yeah, this is only one single item. Again, not for now, but just that was my
Right.
thinking on this.
Yeah, and I mean, again, not for now. I mean, and the reason why it was put in there when the small accessory shed was put in was the fear of people putting up the, hooped carport canvas and hoop everywhere and parking cars then 15 feet from a neighbor's side yard. So
No, I can understand.
you,
I can appreciate that. I guess, I don't mean to carry on. I just want to say, I think that the fear of not putting up hoop structures is one worst case scenario. Somebody fighting the town and winning is a different kind of worst case scenario. And I just think sort of both should be in the thought process when you get around to it.
I think that's a good point, is something I think we need to do some research on and spend time on it, thinking about what it is. I mean, maybe you don't get half the setback if you're having an automobile. I mean, maybe you still get something, but it's not, this one is for allowing something to be half the setback. So,
Yeah, but think of somebody, what happens if somebody buys a property with a shed on it, existing shed on it, and puts a car in it? Then is that not allowed? Do they have to move the shed? I understand the purpose behind it, but
right.
I think it's because can be read as arbitrary because it's just so specific. I just think it's a worrisome inclusion, and I don't know if it's that the fear of the shed being quote unquote misused or used in that way is greater than the fear of somebody, running afoul of this and suing the town over it.
Yeah, you could put your motorcycle and tractor in, just not your car.
Exactly. And I could imagine a judge going, wait a minute, why are
Right.
only cars? So I'm not trying to belabor this. I just
Well, we
point-
specifically regulate cars in structures elsewhere in the bylaws. We talk about garage bays, and you're not supposed to have more than 3 on your lot.
Let's table this to the
Yeah.
time
Sorry.
when we
Yeah.
get to that
all right, so
change discussion.
can we make I make a motion to
We're not,
strike.
we're
Not
not,
done.
we're not done.
Oh,
4.9. So there was a question, and I pointed out that project is not really defined, and again was vague. I talked with town council a little bit about it, and one recommendation for now, it's number 3, sorry. No project shall be phased. Make it as no proposed development, and then you can put project in parentheses, so then we'll refer to projects later on. Because what we always, these are proposed developments that we get under this bylaw that are submitted.
We're just locally defining it as a proposed development.
Right. So it's
Um,
a little more specific than just a project.
mhm. And then,
And
do you want to
then,
talk about the bigger one?
and so then I don't think you need to strike on 5, you don't need to strike development project.
Well, if we
Yeah.
should call it,
You're
So-
calling it a project.
we're labeling it project here, and then we're calling it a project here and here and here, right? But
Mhm.
like calling it a development project here is just a little
Yeah.
inconsistent. It's
Yeah.
not that we have to strike it, but if we're cleaning it up, we may as well
Yeah.
clean it up consistently.
And then the last one, when we were talking about this whole thing, what we did not put in at the time was a sunset clause. We talked about it. So that was omitted, and I did ask town council, and they felt that since we are bringing these up and we're talking about phasing, we can add. And there was a recommendation for a sentence, after the second sentence, phased such that the duration between completion of one phase and at the initiation of the next phase is less than X amount of years.
Okay, I'm just gonna highlight this. I put 5 in because that's my preference, but
Well,
I
that's
know
your-
that
that's
others
your
prefer
discussion.
3. So I'm just gonna be transparent about that up front. So ignore the number because we'll talk about the number in a moment. The concept is that no development shall be phased, whether that's so phased in time, right? If a project has a lag of less than 5 years, where the one project's done and the next project's done 2 years later, or say, okay, we finished phase 1 yesterday, we're starting phase 2 today, right? Right. So some defined lag where you say that's considered one aggregate project. But if the developer owns a large parcel and they say, I'm going to develop only half of this, period. And then 10 years later, they come back and say, now I want to develop the other half. They shouldn't have to be penalized for that. So it's sort of like putting, it's defining what is a project in time.
And also just in case there was a situation where, it was a project and then someone passed off the land and someone wanted to do additional houses, a different developer wanted to do additional houses that might have kind of looked like the first project because it continues the character of the housing. If it's more, if a certain amount of, time has passed, then you don't want to necessarily penalize if it's appropriate, if the land's available.
Yeah, I completely agree with the intent of that. I'm not sure whether the language really does it right, because I mean, first off, we say you can't phase it. And then the next sentence says, well, if you phase it, we'll do the following applies.
Oh, this goes in the second sentence, doesn't it? I think it goes, if a project is phased,
I had it as a second sentence.
if the project is phased such that the lag is less than 5 years, then it is one project. Sorry, I had it in the
Yeah,
wrong place.
I
Does
would
that
almost
help?
want to eliminate the first sentence entirely and just say, if a project is phased, but a subsequent phase starts within n years of the previous phase being completed, they shall be considered one project for the purpose of the affordable housing requirements. It seems strange to me that in the first sentence you're forbidding it, and the second sentence is, well, if you did it anyway, then this is what applies. You see what I'm saying?
Well, we're forbidding it with the sole purpose of avoiding requirements. You can phase a housing development and comply with,
Yeah.
you can phase a housing development however you want if your aggregate project complies with the affordable housing requirements. So the thing that's being forbidden is phasing just to avoid building affordable housing.
Yeah.
And that, I think that needs
fine.
to stay. And then here we define what is that phasing that's problematic. It's less than X years.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Should that be a separate numbered sentence? I mean, to Rob's point, that sentence seems
Yeah.
to be following on inconsistently, whereas if you break it out, it then makes a little more sense.
That makes sense to me. Does that help,
Yeah,
Rob?
that does help a lot, actually, I think.
Sure.
right, I think,
Or-
good job, guys.
Oh, well,
Patty Mae Penn has a comment.
Oh, Penn, yes.
So first comment is, I thought we worked hard. You guys worked very hard. Second, there were the sunset, as it were, or the timing break actually satisfied what came up at the meeting that sort of with some of the advisory folks were at. The number I remember Chris mentioning was 3 years, because I believe he said it was consistent with, and I can't remember what, but he said it was consistent with some general thing in building. So that's as far as my memory goes. But
And most special permits are 3 years. I don't know, or in most, I believe if you do a project and you get approval, if you haven't put shovels in the ground, it's kind of good for, if you have approval, then your site plan approval good for 3 years. Is that what it is?
that may have been it. It was something, yeah. It was something that was relevant to this idea, if that makes sense.
but to me, if a site plan is good for 3 years, I would want the gap to be longer than that, because that says you already have planned your next phase. It's clearly one concept in your mind, if that makes sense. Like, I think having it consistent with the duration of a site plan approval sort of almost,
Encourages that type of space.
yeah, it encourages someone to delay for 3 years and call it two separate projects, even though it's one concept that they sort of, you're just on the heels of finishing phase one, and now you get your approval for phase two, and I'm just going to sit for 3 years, and then I don't have to build the affordable housing. It seems like in order for it to be a different project, the period the lag needs to be longer than a site plan approval, in my mind.
I
3 years to
think-
me seems like a really short time to call
I
it a
think-
completely separate project.
And I think you can ask for an extension too on that 3 years.
Yeah, I think I just kind of, I'm pretty sure Chris Canny was thinking that, with the site plan approval, but I think just given what our intent is here, it needs to be a little bit more, I guess, onerous, and not just so flippant to just, because it takes a while to get through all the permitting and to get shovels in the ground and to get projects started and going. We've watched how long it takes for projects to be built. So, I am inclined to lean towards 5 years rather than the 3 years.
And this is hand up again.
First of all, am I speaking too much in your meeting? I don't want to intrude.
No, Pen, because I think it's valuable to have your insight, because especially since Saturday's meeting is with advisory, and since you will be there, and it'll be valuable to have assistance with making sure we are all in agreement on how this is being presented.
Okay, good. Thank you. My only thought, and I'm sort of not quite playing devil's advocate, but I think another way of looking at it is, if you make it this part onerous enough, what you do is you just create an incentive for the developer to find another way around it. Because since project is not developed, he buys the property and then he shaves off half of it and forms another company to do it. So if I think a developer wants to skin that cat, he's going to find a way to do it. So I think that's just an observation. So.
And we tried to, that's what this last paragraph is an attempt to do. It says a project may not be segmented, nor may a developer divide or subdivide property or establish surrogate or subsidiary business entities to avoid the provisions of this section. If a project is segmented, subdivided, or held under surrogate or subsidiary business entities, the affordable housing requirements shall apply to the aggregate project. So that was, these are all taken from other local bylaws in other towns that have tried to put together language. This has gone before council as well. And we're just doing our best to like try to find those loopholes. And you're right, we're not going to find them all.
We're not going to find them all, nor is, I mean, that was some of the case that was made with why we reduced from 15% to 10%
10%.
and why we changed for the trigger from 2 units or more to 6 units or more. So again, understanding that, the more onerous it is, then the more likely a developer is to to look for any reason not to use it. But then to an extent, there needs to be some kind of discouraging of complete loopholes. So I guess, we may try this and we may say there may be situations that we kind of say, well, that didn't work and we have to change it. So I guess the goal tonight, we didn't have any sunset clause. So it would be kind of without having this 5 years in here, it really did make it difficult to judge, well, is this considered a new, is this considered phasing when it would be, if someone came back 5 years later and started a project, or is that considered a new project? And so this at least sets some terms in there.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I texted Chris and he's okay with 5 years.
Okay.
5's a good
Thank
round
you.
number.
All right.
Um,
Was there
Pen, I
anything-
just wanted to say that I really appreciate your comments about the diligence here, because this has been every planning board meeting for like the last 6 months. And it's some months, it's been every week that we've met to have these conversations instead of every other week. So I just appreciate that, because I feel like it's not always recognized like how much goes into the words on the page.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm like, wow. Like I said, you guys work hard.
Okay, so we need to vote this one, Addie May. We're now done with the updates, at least as far as what was on my radar screen.
Mine
But I
too.
think we also need to re-vote ADU because we went back and made a change to it.
Or just vote this with the additional ADU one.
But that's what I mean. We
Yeah.
do need to vote both of them. Yeah.
Acknowledge it. Yep.
Okay, so motion to accept the updated language to the ADU bylaw. Do we need to spell out which bylaw?
And zoning updates.
The ADU, the accessory dwelling, the inclusionary zoning.
Just the
bylaw.
zoning updates overall
Zoning
bylaw,
updates,
right?
okay. All right, motion to accept the changes to the zoning updates.
That's all you.
All right, and then so then a vote, all in favor, Addie Mae Weiss is aye, Jim Garino,
I,
Steph Harrison,
Aye.
Frank Hoke,
Aye.
and Rob Wolf.
All right.
Okay, six.
And so that was the zoning updates bylaw, Addie
Yes.
May?
Right.
Yeah,
So I think we need to revote the ADU then if we didn't do that bundled.
Okay, so we've made the motion, it's been unanimously approved for the zoning updates, and now a motion to approve the amendment to the ADU bylaw updates. Second, okay, Frank is seconded, and all in favor, Addie Mae Weiss is aye, Jim Garino,
I,
Steph Harrison,
Aye.
Frank Hoke,
Aye.
and Rob Wolf.
All right.
Okay, so that motion had been approved. That vote has been passed. All right, just let you, Steph, make sure you have saved things before you move on.
Do we need to change? Let me just read the red and see if we need to change.
We don't have any just explanation
Yeah.
of the sun setting in the red, but I don't know.
I don't think you need to add that in.
Yeah,
Nope, I don't think we do either. And then let's make sure. Okay, I think that's all fine. I do can we, before we move on off of bylaws? Because I think that's it for bylaws, right? And then we need to move on to developments. But before we move off of bylaws, we have a hearing on Saturday, right? It's the all-day hearing.
Yes.
Addie Mae, do you think that are we just gonna go with it based on what happened last Wednesday and just kind of wing it to get everything down to 5 minutes, or do you want to be more do more preparatory work or?
I mean, I'll do more preparatory work. I guess I didn't I knew that last Wednesday was an opportunity for a little bit more discussion, and so I wasn't kind of as mindful of being scripted, if you will. So I know that you have notes in these slides. I've made notes. I don't know that that's something that we need to do right here and now. I can
No, I didn't mean
check
that. I
with
just
you,
wondered if,
Steph, about that offline. I know I'll be there in person, and I will have my computer. And if the time, depending on the timing, if it works for you to be also with me for presenting, then that's great. If it doesn't, it all depends on timing.
Do we have any clue as to what the timing's going to be? How much is on the agenda before us?
we know what items are on the agenda before us because it goes in the order of the warrant, but we have no idea how long the items before us are going to take. Like the whole library thing on Wednesday's hearing kind of blew up an hour and a half longer than anyone else expected it to. So, and that may very well happen on Saturday as well. It's really unpredictable. So I have to step out from like 3:30 until about 5:30. I'll be stepping out, which is very non-ideal timing as far as where we are positioned on the warrant. So,
Do you want to have
yeah,
a backup person?
well, I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at in part is that like, I think that
I think if you weren't, I guess here's the question. Who else is planning to be there on Saturday potentially? If there's I'm in person, is there anyone else planning on going in person? And then if not, that's fine. And is there anyone else that was planning on chiming in? If should I email everyone or text when we're getting close? If we're getting close, is there? I mean, we're not. And if there is potential, I also need to make sure that we're Heidi. I can't remember. Are we posted to as a planning board to
Yes.
join advisory on
Yes.
Saturday as a board?
Yes. I was just on
Yes,
that town website.
planning board at advisory.
Okay. I mean, I think, thanks to the work that Heidi and Chris Canny have done with the advisory group and also with select board members, I think a lot of questions were answered. And so really the questions that might come up will be questions from the general public potentially. I don't know how many those will be, but I feel like, especially since we as a board have hashed through this in such detail for so long, that we can answer those. And you've done an excellent job, Steph, of having your notes and having it be so clear between the split screen explanations that Chris Canny has done and then our PowerPoints being pretty straightforward. I think we're in good shape.
so my understanding is that with the 5-minute limitation per item on Saturday, we're sticking with just the PowerPoints for that opening 5 minutes. And then if there are questions from either the officials or the public about particular items, we can jump to the split screen, as appropriate to talk about specific items.
Right. After tonight, you've done the cleanup of the split screen language, and I'm taking those slides and I'm updating the packet that we put on the website to make sure the numbering is correct and that we've got all of our little updates from tonight in that packet. So that packet will be updated definitely by Thursday morning. I don't know if I'll get it done completely tomorrow and if it will get posted by tomorrow, but it'll be done by Thursday. And we will have copies. It'll be fresh with all of the, everything we discussed tonight will be fresh and updated in that packet. And I will have copies, paper printed copies on Thursday as well. I mean,
So I
on
guess the
Saturday for anyone in the audience and advisory members.
So, but is it a hybrid? It's a hybrid meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So there will still be a need to share the PowerPoint screen.
This PowerPoint screen, yes. Yes. So, and I'll have my computer and I'll be prepared to share that if, if you're there, then that makes it easier, but it's also, I should be able to do that also. And it might be just as easy because I can flip forward and really it's, if we were trying to share the split screen commentary, the actual zoning language, that's the only part that's maybe, I mean, that's where your ability to flip between multiple documents is so unique. But as far as being able to flip through the PowerPoint and discuss, we can point people to the zoning language, and I'll have paper copies in hand in person, and we'll figure it out. I mean, I will be prepared. I know I wasn't as narrowed down and dialed in on Wednesday last week, but
Do,
Um,
is,
when-
I don't
when-
know- excuse me, go ahead, Steph.
I guess I'm just sort of wondering because I feel like the updates is not easy to, it's such a potpourri of items, right? That, let me share my screen. I'm proposing in the PowerPoint, I think we might need to make a modification to the PowerPoint, and that is this. I think we need to take out these slides with the complex examples about a drive under garage or a walkout basement, because it took a long time to orient somebody to any one of these plans and then describe it. And I feel like this picture helps to understand, but we won't be able to really spend time on this and go into deep dive on two examples and still get out all of the rest of these bulleted points in 5 minutes.
Agreed.
So I guess I'm suggesting to move these to the back of the slide deck in case we need to answer questions about it, and try to use this as the slide on which to describe the issue.
Yeah, and just making it clear again, that's sections of wall as opposed to the whole elevation, which change the calculation.
Yeah, so I'm going to revise these talking points, but like, I guess I'm struggling with, like, if I'm not there, I wonder if
If you have those as an appendix, which is what I think you're suggesting, that would probably work rather than run through two different sets of calculations for that, which would be very
right.
confusing, especially in that amount of time.
But I guess I'm also wondering if, like, well, I'll make the talking points, so hopefully it's just readable from the presenter view.
yeah, I mean, one thing again, that kind of where Jim just specified, just if we want to just expand that bullet point slightly, where you say modified average lowest finished grade calculation method to include sections of wall. Just
To
kind of
allow.
right there, someone reading it that kind of is a little bit kind of a visual right there that helps.
Yeah. Penn has his hand up.
Yep, go ahead, Penn.
Well, so I want to say that I think, and I'm speaking for myself, I can't speak for advisory, but I think that all the advanced work that was done with advisory members being able to meet with Heidi was really, really helpful. So I don't expect I personally will have any questions for you. And I would think that might go for most or all of the rest of advisory. So I think the questions you're going to get are going to be from the public. And I agree that I think the smallest snapshot you can give them, the better, because if you say this is what we're doing. I think you're absolutely on the right track, because I know you're gonna have people spending the whole 5 minutes staring at those drawings if you give them the drawings time and figure out what exactly you're doing. So, I think snapshots, this, 3 sentences, this is what we're doing, it sounds like you're working in that direction. I think that's absolutely the way to go, because I think your questions are more likely to come from the public. So just a
Okay.
So I guess, yeah, to their point, Steph, I'm okay and in agreement with moving 4 and 5 to the back of the slide deck, just so that they're there in here for reference. But if we need to, right, put a break in there.
Okay. And I didn't have any talking points on these either. All the talking points are here. I just have to figure out how to simplify it. So, sorry to belabor this, but like Addie Mae, how do you wanna prepare? Do you want me to just write talking points that can be delivered in 5 minutes? Do you want to have a practice session? Do you want to have a practice session with someone else involved? Or do you want to save all that for actual town meeting?
Um, see, I'm trying to think if there's, I don't know what your Friday looks like, or I don't know. I mean, I could do a dry rehearsal with Heidi maybe, and just kind of see if I'm, how my timing is. You've got lots of talking points in there, Steph, already that you've worked on, and I can take those. I mean, again, you thought this through very, very clearly, so and put it into words. So, and of course, if it works out for you to be there, are you comfortable with talking through some of them?
Yeah, I totally am.
Okay.
I haven't scripted all of the talking points because a lot of it was ad hoc for me, just being familiar with the material. So I need more work scripting if someone else is going to be reading a script. You know what I mean? I just need to spend a little
Yeah,
more
I mean,
time on it, I think.
I guess, right.
So, but
Yeah, I mean,
Friday,
I guess my preparation, I would have bullet points and I would never read a script. So that's just the way I operate. So I would take your talking points and I would have bullet points. And again, because we've all worked with this so much, it's like I don't have it. My tendency is not to go verbatim on something, but everyone approaches how they're presenting differently. Um, and I would trust that with the number of advisory and select board members, if there was something that somehow I omitted to say, that someone would find that.
Do you want a backup person at all? Like someone like who would know that they could handle floodplains or something else,
I
like
mean,
ADUs, or
I'm
just
certainly happy to, have anyone there. I don't expect this meeting to be, I actually don't know. There's no way to know exactly how Saturday could go. It could be we, present, this is the slides, and you're basically preaching to the choir. Everyone, the audience speaks, because it's an all day Saturday, and because it's the nature of it being so you don't know exactly when it's going to fall on the time, this time schedule. Those who attend this advisory hearing are those who have already been attending meetings, and um so it historically, unless with the amount of work that we've all done as a board and that Heidi and Chris have done, um I just, I think this crowd is going to be a different crowd than the town meeting crowd, even though it's public and anyone in public is invited to comment. There might be one or two, but and it's also appropriate if we're presenting and those who are advisory, it's their meeting. If someone in the public makes a question, that all of a sudden I just have a total brain freeze, but they're aware because everyone's got their handouts and like we are able to, you know, facilitate work together and answer questions.
and do we anticipate still having a space to talk about the sign bylaw? Is that still a desire? Have the script
Yes, I
available?
had meant to have you say something last Wednesday, and it did slip my mind, and I think it would be right at the very beginning of the presentation. So if the timing works for you to be there and just address that before we go into our presentation, that your short, paragraph, then I would have you do it. Otherwise, I have your language and it was well written and I think it's succinct and it just explains why, where we were at with that. So
I just want to make sure that Dan has that on his radar, so it doesn't come out of the 5 minutes of the first zoning bylaw time limit.
I will reach out to Dan and just give him that heads up and just ask, for instance, was that request of advisory that we withdraw that. And I do think because there might be, our goal was to just at least have it in a setting that was acknowledged publicly that we did withdraw it, but that we did take it under consideration in the circumstances. So that we listened to residents who had concerns.
Okay.
So when he was at our meeting, we talked about that. He certainly agreed to it. I think it's just a
Yes.
reminder that we are going to do it and where it's done. That's really the case, right?
I think he said on the Saturday hearing was when he wanted to do it. He couldn't guarantee a slot at town meeting, but he said he
Right.
could make time for it in his Saturday meeting.
Because he controls the Saturday meeting.
Yeah.
The town moderator controls the the town annual town meeting.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Correct.
So my goal then, Addie May, will be to email you these PowerPoints with notes Thursday, sometime on Thursday. So you have Friday to look at them, condense them, practice. If you're practicing Friday night, that's fine. Before Saturday.
Steph,
Does
can
that
I
work?
get this earlier? Because I've got to get all this, I was going to have this printed up at the printer for booklets.
Yeah,
I have to
including
update
the including the
booklet, so-
PowerPoints.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, and need be, I can just do the others. I was going to print out the whole thing like we have it online to have some
Well,
hard
there,
copies.
don't forget.
I need to correct that online packet.
And
Yeah.
also there was, Addie May, there were a number of changes to the PowerPoint that have to get incorporated to the PowerPoints that have to get incorporated into that online packet, like the
Right.
table of the
Right.
ADU.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
One per, one
Yeah.
per type.
Yeah.
So I don't,
I guess, I guess, can you, I mean, you're, the only updates that you haven't made were anything that you wanted to add to the narrative, right?
correct.
Okay, so go ahead and send the stuff that you saved tonight to Heidi and myself so that we can update the packet, and I'll work on that. And then as far as the narrative, then when you've kind of had a chance to review the narrative so that in case you're available to speak, you're comfortable with it, and just share it just in case. And for the time being, I'll use what you have, and just like I said, I will probably take your narrative and write my own bullet point list. So
Yeah, I'm not worried at all about floodplains. I'm not worried about really even about ADU or
Right.
MOD. It's the updates one that's like really challenging to hit the nails on the heads. And so I need
Okay.
to just, okay. So I'll resend you that one with narrative
okay,
by Thursday.
By
So I'll send you
Thursday.
guys everything tonight and then
Yeah.
I'll resend
right.
the
So we can
updates
update the
one
packet.
Thursday. Okay. All right. Sounds like a plan. Sorry for belaboring the point with everyone here. Just so fast. Okay.
All right. So as far as our bylaws, are we good? We're good, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry. All right, so
Last item
bylaws
for
were
the-
good. And so then the other item on the agenda was a letter for the to ZBA about the proposed, the newest 40B application on Washington Street for the two duplexes. It's two duplexes, each one also having an ADU, was that, or no?
No.
No,
This
just two
is just
duplexes, and he said 1,600 square feet.
each, 4
Each.
units. Yeah.
I'm going to sign off here. Thank you. Unless I can be of further help.
Okay. No,
Thank you for your
Ken.
input. Ken.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let's see, so I did not draft a letter. and we need to, if we do send a letter, we need it to be approved by the board. I guess as far as discussion and points that I'm trying to think of the best way, can I open let's see, I can,
When is the letter? When would we need to send the letter?
April 3rd, so we won't be able to have another meeting before.
It actually, we're gonna meet April 1st then. I think
Oh,
the
okay,
1st
so
is
we
a
could
Tuesday. I
have
was
a
just
letter.
realizing that if you want to have a draft ready for approval, they
Okay,
usually,
so,
except they usually like to have it in their packet before then.
Well,
Um,
okay, well, I
you
guess
might
then
like it, but it doesn't.
since it's on, in order to write the draft, which I will do the draft because I did say I would do it, and it kind of falls, I believe, I guess I'll be interested if we can have a discussion now as a planning board so that I can hear what you all think, because from where I sit with the kind of past experience and again with the housing production plan, um, if this project had been presented and we didn't have all of this other noise and all of the other kind of background on that colors maybe any feelings on the project, my gut says this is the kind of thing that the housing production plan intended to, we said we wanted small projects and, basically small growth and incremental increases of housing. Of course, we encouraged and supported a project such as Coolidge Street, partly because the more and more most development and most developers in the Commonwealth has kept saying you can't do small projects because it's just financially not possible to build the affordable unit and offset that with such a small number of units. And so those things weren't coming up. And then we've got all this history, and here we are now, we're being presented with what's a relatively small project that it looks like it has the acreage. I don't know about the wetlands exactly and how this project works with that, but that's not really a planning board concern. I don't know exactly how this, is the septic and the well situation going to work on that lot for these two duplexes. I don't know. That's not really a planning board purview. Our purview is looking at the lot, looking at location, looking at what this is as far as it being two duplexes. It fits the character, I think, of the neighborhood and the, community. It's does add, the nature of them all being small adds three of them, which are kind of what they call the naturally affordable housing by being smaller units. They should be priced just because of based on what the market will bear. You would assume they would be naturally more affordable than a larger single family house. Of course, we've seen new construction just because it being new can be more expensive. But if you're trying to say, well, what's the intent or what was the goal, you can't control every factor. I feel like this is kind of in the right direction, but I haven't talked with any of you, so I don't know how you all feel if those points, if we were to write a letter that was essentially supportive of this, I don't know how, I don't want to just be speaking. Those are kind of where I stand from what I've seen, but I'm maybe missing something.
No, I agree with you completely, Addie May. I think this is in the right direction of the affordable housing goals that we have in town. The density is appropriate. Um, he's doing some nice gestures such as net zero, which would improve sustainability. And I think it's a overall pretty well planned project for what it's trying to accomplish.
I am in agreement. I also feel like I recall discussions that the planning board had on Greenwood homes, which was for a 40B with 4 homes on 4 1-acre lots in 2-acre zoning or something like this. So it was like consistent with what we would want a 40B to look like in Sherborn. And I was looking for the planning board letter on Greenwood homes. I don't see a letter. I remember a discussion that like an email was being sent, and I found the select board letter for Greenwood Homes, which doesn't include a planning board letter per se, but it does include statements in the select board letter that says things like the planning board reviewed the design and layout of the development were considered by the planning board and town planner to be generally appropriate for single-family homes on 1-acre lots. Proposed exterior designs are compatible with Sherborne's traditional rural style. So obviously a communication was sent to the select board about Greenwood homes, and that might be a good one to dig up as a starting point because it's maybe there's something similar in style and content that would be appropriate. I think that there's points to be made about supporting the, diversity of housing in the master plan and things like that. But the Greenwood homes, I think maybe there was an email sent rather than a letter.
Pardon?
Because it says it was considered by the planning board and the town planner, it might have come from Gino. I just don't seem to have record of that. So
I
Yeah,
can
they're
look through
kind of-
Gino's emails.
I seem to remember that as well. I think the
Yeah.
points that you laid out, Adime, were really good. I think if you start the letter with this is the purview from the planning board, and from that perspective, these are our thoughts on that. And I like the idea also of then taking some of those common statements from the Greenwood and using them as well if it's obtainable.
The Greenwood home from the select board went on December 3rd of 2022.
Okay,
So sometime before that is when Gino may have sent
okay.
an email.
All right, that makes
It
it.
would have had to have been probably after July or August, because I think that was the year that I came on. I don't know if it was 21 or 22 that I started with the board. Do you remember, Rob?
2021, I thought. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And one other point you might want to mention is he's actually following the anti-segmentation law proposals because he did the phase 1 with Greenwood with 4 lots, and now he's doing 3 lots where he would have had to produce one affordable unit and he is.
Yeah.
I think he said earlier that he's well, I mean, given the size, but I think he said he was intentionally making these below market rate for all of the units,
Yeah.
which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that I think, yeah, so I think we are all on the same page and I feel comfortable. I've written down notes that you've all said, and I will also look at that back to the Greenwood letter to kind of make sure our language where it's appropriate mirrors so that we're consistent in our approach, and have a draft that I can send out to everyone probably next week, so ahead of the our meeting on April 1st. So that essentially by April 1st, I guess if I send a draft out, Heidi, ahead of April 1st, people are allowed to respond to you with any
Yep.
edits, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we could compile edits so that to try and make that a little more streamlined if there are tweaks and changes, so that April 1st, we're not wasting too much time and everyone's exhausted.
Trying to edit a document, right?
So, okay.
Maybe one thing I would I don't know if this belongs in this type of a comment letter, is that maybe some screening would be good because the housing will be more dense. So maybe if he's leaving some screening in place, that would, some, natural vegetation, that's fine. It's just not clear on the plans, and there's not much of a grade difference and these buildings are, compact and close together, so. But they're set back from the road, so maybe some screening would be
Are
appropriate.
you thinking screening from the road, or where are you thinking the
Yeah,
screening?
visual screening from the road, so that, I'll share the site plan right now, just so people can see the site plan. So this is actually the one we just looked at, right, with Washington Street being up at the top of the page here.
Mhm.
So then there's a shared driveway, which is fine, and then there's these two duplex buildings. And I didn't pull up the oh, I'm in Greenwood. Let me pull up the Washington. I just want to see if they're 2 stories. I'm guessing they are.
They are. They don't.
Yeah.
The renderings don't really account for the grade difference there. So
Well, but the grade difference is only 1 foot. So that's the first thing I looked at is there natural screening provided by this hill? But they're 219, 220. Each contour is only 1 foot, so there's not really a giant hill here. It's just a gentle slope. So these would be quite visible, from the road. So maybe the plan is to leave a lot of this natural wooded area intact, which maybe would serve that purpose. But if there's to be a sloping lawn out this way, it would be nice to have some screening, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess I question. I mean, if they're designed to kind of look like 2 single-family houses, essentially.
Mhm.
I mean, would we ask for screening if someone was building? It's 4 acres. Would we?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're going to be closer together than any other 2 single family homes.
Right, but I
But
mean,
if you use the wording, the planning board would, like to see the developer, consider some screening and line of sights from the road as well as from the other houses. I mean, it doesn't mean that he's forced into it, but it's something that keeps the character of the town.
yeah, but
I hear what
then
you're saying, Addie Mae. It's not like having a
yeah,
big apartment complex, but it is denser and bulkier than a normal zoning than the underlying zoning would be.
But what he's gonna say is, would you make a market rate development do the same thing?
yeah, it seems a little just because they're closer together. I mean, they're down a long driveway. I guess what I'm not sure is which part is going to be facing the road. If it's the driveways are essentially not, you're not going to see the driveways and the
No.
garage from the road. You're going to see. I can't remember the way.
Yeah, I mean, they're not, I mean, so Washington Street is, I believe, where the contours end right here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just thinking of like
End of the
59 North
driveway.
Main. Those houses are close together, but they look like they're single family. I mean, they are some of them are they're duplexes, but they look like single family homes, and so I wouldn't expect to have screening.
Okay. I
I
mean,
don't
I mean,
know.
I
I
think
mean, unless someone else agrees that
we can talk about it. I mean, it's not exactly, 4 units spread out over 4 acres because over half of the land is not usable for wetlands, right? So it's really, I mean, if this whole outlined red area is 4 acres, it's less than 2 acres that all the facilities are on, and it's the wedge against the road. And I'm not stuck to it, but I maybe I don't agree that um this will look like, I mean, yes, they're made to look like single family homes, but there's 2 right next to each other. They're going to be bigger, right? So, just maybe worth.
I mean, I could see screening from the road more for their for the new residents to hopefully have some sound. I
I
mean,
would think they would want that.
busy
Yeah.
road, so
But yeah,
I mean, I think the grading here is gonna help though mitigate whatever density there is or massing.
a little bit, yes.
I don't know what the finished grades will look like. That has to be worked out, but presumably there'd still be something left behind those and to the side, right?
And maybe we wait until we have site plans, through the ZBA process to even talk about it, because like you said, they could, the grading on the site could make a difference, or it could not make a difference depending on how they do it, and they haven't proposed that yet. So maybe it's just premature.
I mean,
Yeah.
the site is somewhat, it creates constraints to where you can build, I guess. So that's probably how we ended up with this, but.
Yep. Yeah, I'm okay with omitting it from this letter. Just,
Okay. All right, so I'll take those comments again. We'll have a draft for everybody to look at, and in the meantime, if you think of something, we can add it, and I will try to get that to everyone next week so that it's ahead of our April 1st meeting. And if you, when the letter goes, the draft goes out, if you have comments, you can reply to share it, respond to Heidi with those comments so she can compile them. Any other reports or discussion for this evening?
well, just a quick question on this site plan.
Yep.
Am I still sharing?
Yes, we're looking
Oh,
at the
okay.
the plan.
I believe this is the 60-foot set. This line is parallel with the 60-foot setback line. Is that right?
Yes.
From, if I remember from the A&R from earlier today.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So, so they would be requesting a variance from the setback, the building setback, right?
Correct. And it's a
Okay.
40B.
I'm just trying to get my head around what this is. So,
Right.
okay.
A waiver in this case, right? 'Cause-
Right. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's cool. Thanks.
I mean, I guess there could be your point of screening on that corner because of the setback, but again, with Washington Street being such a busy road, it'd be more inclined to request that, the natural vegetation along the roadway not be totally scrubbed, mostly because it would provide some sort of sound kind of barrier for those residents from the roadway traffic. All right. Again, it'll be a draft and you'll have time to think on that one further. Anything else? News with other board reports?
I think we
Okay.
haven't had any other time.
Right. All right, so
Next meeting's 4/1 and 4/15. And then
okay.
4/29 is the town meeting.
Okay. And then town meeting is the 29th of
9th.
April?
29th.
Okay.
So we figured out Saturday how that's gonna be covered. Do we need support?
I think we are okay unless anyone's dying. I mean, I will make sure, let's see, I think I have everyone's cell phone number. If there's any weird reason, I will reach out and I'll reach out to let everyone know if we're getting closer, just in case you're able to jump on. And
Sure.
I believe since that would be a scheduled discussion, I could have a text thread with everybody on that, couldn't I? Or
Yeah, that's just talking about timing.
is it purely timing
Right.
update? So I will create a text thread to just as we get closer to just, then those who wish may jump on via hybrid. And again, I have a feeling that the audience is going to be, it's going to be the audience that already is fairly well versed in all of these topics. There might be one or two that just are new to a topic, but I think for the most part at this hearing, it's not the same audience as town meeting.
What I do find, so I've been, taking minutes on this hearing for the last 3 years, and I do find that, like, and I'm not doing it this year because I can't, but I do find that there are very informed citizens who show up at this
Right.
meeting. So it's not, I don't think that we're going to get no questions. I don't think that the audience is just select board and advisory. There will be some pretty informed residents there, maybe
Right.
who don't know. I mean, I've been surprised at like, some
No,
of
you're
this.
absolutely right. I mean, it's like the
Yeah.
Michael Newmans who've come to our meetings and had some very good points. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
you're right. I guess I just don't. I think we've been through the ringer already
Yeah.
with so much. I mean, I don't think I've ever hashed through bylaw work the way this board has done, and it's incredible. Like, we all have done a ton of work. So I guess to that point, I think, whatever comes up, I feel like we've heard it before and we're fairly prepared to discuss.
How is the budget item being covered if you're not there, Heidi? Are you doing that one, Addie May?
I am doing that one, and it would be presenting, that this was a microcosm. The work that we just have done over the last year plus is a microcosm, and it's eye-opening how much work needs to be done with our bylaws, and nobody's had time to really streamline and make sure that we're not just continually cutting and pasting and things that don't make sense, or things that aren't up to date with state statutes potentially, and just a thorough review is needed.
Yeah, no, that's great. I guess my question was, do you need support on the PowerPoint end of things?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we're in good shape.
Okay.
So
Can I
you're
ask
right,
a
Frank,
really rudimentary question? It's going to show my ignorance. I've been on the town website. I've typed in the search bar warrant so I can see the listing of the warrant articles and what order that they're in. I can't find anything about the 2025 warrants. Am I doing something wrong?
I don't think so, Frank. I haven't seen it either.
Yeah.
It's like it's private until I think public.
And I think that because of it, until after the 22nd, advisory doesn't have everything there all nailed down. So that's why I think that's why the advisory needs it to go smoothly and straightforward on Saturday, so that then they can get all this information out there.
So we don't know what the order is, and we don't know. So we have no idea when we're going to be going. Okay.
Well, they do know the order.
But it's not on, like, I think what Frank's saying, it's like, we don't have that list online.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
saw-
how many warrant articles there are on the town warrant this year, and I don't know where planning board warrant articles fit in the order.
Well, we know that we're numbers like 17, 18, 19, 20 or whatever, right? Because that was the numbers that was tagged to us on the select board agenda.
Right.
But other than that, we don't know. And I thought there was a news article about town meeting. I'm just looking for it.
And I'm gonna be doing a town planner office hours tomorrow night from 7 to 8. Just Zoom or in person in a small office. We'll see if anyone from town wants to stop in and ask questions.
Complain about traffic on Western Avenue.
Oh my gosh, don't even say that. I hope we start getting the traffic calming things going there this spring.
The radar signs just were delivered yesterday.
Oh,
So
great.
those
So if they do
feedback
show up,
signs
we have
should
an update.
be as soon as and Matt Collette is the one that we will be doing the work, so we'll get him scheduled soon to get those installed. We've just been waiting for ground to thaw, and I know now it feels like spring's here. Okay, we got to get all this stuff done, but it's still. I mean, a week ago we had ice everywhere, so.
That would be good though, if people were able to kind of track that down. There's
Yeah.
violations over there.
Yeah, and we'll then it'll be interesting because it'll collect feedback on speed and volume. So it'll be good to have that data. And then this summer, when the calming islands, the splitter islands are constructed, then it'll be interesting to have the data after those are in place to see if there's a change. And it'll be interesting in general for all future thinking of roadway and traffic calming and what works and maybe what doesn't work. And so it'll be good to have.
I made it a point to take a ride over there after and look at how Odessa's managing that flow and other things that are happening over there.
All right, if there's nothing else, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning? Addie Mae Weiss is aye. Jim Garino,
I
Steph Harrison,
Aye.
Rob Wolf,
Aye.
and Frank Hoke.
Aye.
All right, the meeting is adjourned at 9:35 p.m. Thank you, everyone, as always. Thanks for all of the work that you've been doing.